If I could go back and talk to myself as a younger tennis coach, man, I'd have a lot to say. After 24 years, I've coached thousands of players, trained thousands of tennis coaches, and I've also spoken at some huge international coaches conferences. Coaching just isn't about drills and technique. It's about understanding people, designing great practices, and actually making an impact. Stick around for 20 lessons that I would give my younger self. These lessons will save you time, frustration, and hopefully build a better connection between you and your players. Lesson number 1. Stop running basic drills. Basket drills don't transfer to matches. Early on, I thought drilling technique was enough, but my players looked great in practice, but would fall apart in match play. The solution is relatively simple. Just design game-based sessions where players make real-life decisions under pressure. Lesson number 2, stop trying to coach everyone. You can't serve, pardon the pun, every type of player. I coached everyone from juniors to adults to disability tennis to performance to schools to community programs to high performance programs. But I was spread too thin. But my solution was relatively simple. Find the level and the type of player that I enjoyed coaching. I specialized in under 10 tennis. I made sure that I knew everything about this age group, what they were capable of and what their potential was. This helped me specialize in the area that I now deliver coach education to and also speak at international conferences. Lesson number 3, coaching isn't just about tennis. Players need more than just technique. They need mindset, confidence and tactics. I used to only focus on technique, ignoring the mental side of the game. I quickly developed a game-based style of coaching to help them deal with match pressure. Lesson number 4, your time is valuable. Charge for it. Many tennis coaches undercharge and overwork. I used to coach for over 50 hours a week and struggle financially. Make sure you're paid what you're worth, especially if you're working under a head coach or a commercial center. Raise your rates, work less hours, and be more effective on court. The more you coach, the more physically and mentally demanding it is. Don't undercharge yourself. Lesson number 5, play development is a long-term game. Coaches, players, parents, they all expect quick results. I used to get really frustrated with my players if they couldn't perform what I would perceive very simple tasks straight away. But we have to understand that learning takes time. It may take 4 hours, 4 minutes, 4 years, but it doesn't really matter as long as the player is progressing. Trust the process. Skill takes time to develop. Lesson number 6, if you're not growing, you're stagnating. Many tennis coaches stop learning after their qualifications. Back when I passed my level 4 in 2005, I truly believed I was at the very peak of my powers. I knew everything about tennis coaching. I was an LTA level 4 performance tennis coach. It wasn't until I was watching other coaches around me that I found out I actually knew nothing. The solution again was relatively simple. I have watched and worked with hundreds of tennis coaches over the years. I've taken little parts of each coach and made what I believed worked really well and made it my own. Lesson number 7, the best coaches are the best communicators. Knowledge doesn't really mean much if you can't explain it. Einstein, you may know him, quite a clever guy. A great quote of Einstein's: if you can't explain something simply, you don't fully understand it. I used to use too much jargon with my players. I would just show off my knowledge of biomechanical principles, but my players didn't really improve. Now I use much simple and clearer language. If a 10-year-old can't get it, that's my fault. I have to make sure that I get my message across in a clear and concise way. Lesson number 8, coaching is more about guiding than controlling. Over-coaching slows down player development. I used to micromanage every single shot. Players became dependent on me. If they made a mistake, they looked to me for the answers. But now I ask more questions and I allow players to explore solutions themselves. Lesson number 9, stop overloading players with information. Too much talking, not enough doing. I used to over-explain every single minute detail. My players learned slower. We spent more time in a lesson talking, well, let's be honest, listening to me than we did actually playing. Now my sessions focus on one key intention and we explored it through play. What I've learned very quickly is tennis players, no matter the age or the stage, they don't learn by listening, they learn by performing. Lesson number 10, the best players are not always the best students. Talent doesn't equal work ethic. Some of my most talented players were also the least motivated. Now I prioritize coachability over tennis skills. Lesson number 11, skill needs variability. I've had many players over the years who would look great in an isolated practice drill, but when you put them into an open situation like a match, they would fall apart. The problem was very simple. My training was too predictable. By mass feeding the same shot over and over again, the players didn't develop the very important perceptual skills that they need. Because the ball came from the same place, the players didn't have to read information from the environment. But when they were put in some more dynamic situation like a match, they couldn't read the information. This is why we've seen a very small transfer of learning. Now I make sure that there's high variability in all my practices. That brings me nicely onto lesson number 12. Repetition without repetition is key. I used to think doing 100 forehands in a row was helping my player. You know, the idea of repetition and muscle memory. Tennis is a dynamic game. No tennis player will hit the ball in the same position from the same spot in the same way 2 times in a row. Therefore, why was my training going that way? Instead of the robotic, isolated practices, I would encourage my younger self to give players more variability. Can you change something in the task or the game that will force the player into finding another movement solution? Repetition without repetition is very simple. Can you get the same outcome but in multiple different ways? Lesson 13, players need ownership of their own learning. I once had a player who would always ask, what should I do after every single mistake? What I learned very quick was to stop giving him solutions. Instead, I would ask him, what did you notice? What could you try differently? I tried to get the player to become more attuned with the information from his environment. Because I can't see the world through the player's lens. They can't see it through my lens either. Players who learn to reflect and problem solve learn quicker. They become more independent and great thinkers on the court. Lesson number 14, mindset training should be part of every single practice. One of my most talented players would crush it in practice but then fall apart in matches. The issue wasn't the technique, it was their ability to handle pressure. Because my drills lacked consequences, when the players would put any type of pressure, you know, scoreboard pressure, they would crumble. My players were never used to being in the lead. My players were never used to being behind. Every single practice I would conduct had no consequences. It was mainly focused on repetition. Lesson number 15, don't fix everything at once. I used to stop players constantly. Fix your grip, bend your knees, follow through over your shoulder, rotate your hips more, use your knees more. And guess what? They froze after every single shot. They were so used to being told what they were doing wrong. Now I prioritize a movement solution, but rather than telling the player how to correct their movement, I will make sure that I will manipulate the game or the constraints and allow the player to find the solution themselves. Lesson number 16, more feedback doesn't equal better learning. Coaches feel the need to give constant, non-stop feedback. I used to commentary coach. Every single time the player hit the ball, I felt I had to say something. Whether that be a good, unlucky, bend your knees, follow through, go quicker through the ball, I felt it was my job to carry on talking. Now in my lessons, I'm pretty much quiet. Yes, for some coaches, I might not be intense enough, but I'm allowing my player the room and the space to grow themselves. I'm allowing them time to self-reflect before I jump in and give an opinion. And that's right, it's only an opinion. I don't have all the answers to players. They need to problem solve themselves. Lesson 17, set clear and measurable goals. Players improve randomly without direction. I've had many talented players who struggle to progress. What I realized pretty quick is we didn't have any clear set goals. Now, I don't focus on outcome goals such as ratings or rankings or making 7 out of 10 backhands in a row. We focus on behavioral goals. Can you be calm in moments of stress? Can you remain focused in moments of distraction? And we have a very simple 1 to 3 measuring system for this, which I may be sharing in a later video. Lesson number 18, players learn best when they're under struggle. When a player was struggling, I felt it was my job and responsibility to jump in and rescue. I would be the lifeguard tennis coach. But this was my own ego taking over. Now I would stand back and allow players to learn from the struggle. We have to understand that tennis players need to make mistakes. They need to make errors so the body can recalibrate and try and find a more efficient, effective movement solution. Let players fail and adapt before we intervene. Lesson number 19, no more standing around. Oh, back in the early 2000s, I loved the basket drill. I loved lining my players up. I loved controlling everything. But I learned very quickly that players don't learn by standing in queues. Humans, we do not like waiting in line. Now, tennis players need volume. They need lots of opportunities to practice. Standing in line takes that opportunity away. And lesson number 20, let the players talk. Too often in sessions, the vast majority was just me talking to players, telling them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Now the player speaks first. I want the player's opinion. What did they notice? What did they see? How are they going to fix it? Now, I don't think they're anywhere near a reasonable movement solution, then I may give my opinion as well. What we have to understand is we don't see the world through the player's eyes. We only have an opinion. Let the player talk. If you want to be a better tennis coach, check out my Tennis Coach Academy in the link below.